What's going on, guys? My name is Joe Graves, and this is Mastering Business Growth. Running a business can either be amazing or an absolute nightmare. So on this show, I speak with people who are killing it in business, and I find out what it really takes to succeed. If you think you'd be a good guest, then drop me an email at joe@innersound.media. Enjoy the episode. How are we doing?
Hello.
We're good.
Yeah, we're really good. Really good,
Excellent.
thank you.
Do you know, I've been really looking forward to this one. I heard of you guys initially through Michael Mattia.
Yes.
Yes.
And been looking into you guys since, and you've spoken to a few friends of mine like Ryan and whatnot. So again, this show is called Mastering Business Growth because I'm trying to master business growth. And I like to try and do that by speaking to people like yourselves who are doing incredibly well. So please, can we start with who you are and what you do? We'll start with you, Sue.
Okay, so I'm Sue Howorth and co-founder and director alongside Dave with the family business community.
And likewise, Dave Clarkson, co-founder, work alongside the boss, Sue.
Lovely. What is the family business community?
So the family business community was, we'll come on to sort of the initial starts of it, but in essence, what it does now is the family business, just to put some context, is the largest sector. So over 85% of businesses, privately owned businesses in the UK are family owned or family managed. So they might be managed but run by non-family.
Got you.
And some of the largest businesses in the world are family owned.
Such as?
Cargill, JCB, Siemens. So it's
Lego.
Yeah.
Lego?
Yeah.
Oh,
Disney.
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's all that. So there's huge businesses.
Yeah.
But when the family business community is there to connect, support and advise. And it's a network for family businesses.
Love it. So where did it all start? Where did the idea come from?
Well, taking it back to the very beginning, this always works, doesn't it? With just, if you take us back to the early point, and I'll do the pickup.
You do the pickup, yeah. So in the early days, so probably before we officially became a business, my career had changed in the way that I was a mum to my daughter and started just, rather than going back into full-time work, doing some freelance work, using my sort of career background and just doing some freelance work. What I realised at the time was I lived in Cumbria and I didn't know, we'd relocated to Cumbria. I didn't know anyone really in the business world in Cumbria. So it was at the time when there was growth hubs and Business Link had gone and there was growth hubs and other business support mechanisms that were coming out and they were looking for mentors. So to give something back, I felt that actually, and it'd be a great way to meet people, would be to start doing some mentoring and advisory across Cumbria. And I was still doing my freelance work, but this was my voluntary giving back.
What exactly were you doing as a freelancer?
So my background is very much business development and operations, working UK and rest of world. So I've worked in different industries across from call centre industries to working within the world of sort of, I'm going to say where working with private equity and VCs and executive research. So it's identifying talent across the world when there's mergers and acquisitions that could globally sit within. In essence, but I used to help lead teams that ran those companies. So then I stepped away and worked at the YMCA when I moved to Cumbria as head of business development and corporate social responsibility, and then took time out with my daughter. And then obviously started. So when I was doing freelance work, it was business development projects and doing some due diligence and research for sort of different things that were happening. But a lot of my clients were my networks, which were international. So hence why I didn't know anyone locally, which was quite ironic because about a year later I became probably the person that everyone said, God, Sue knows everyone. But I really didn't the year before. It was starting from scratch. So it was a lot of the businesses through the mentoring and the advisory that I started to meet were family-owned businesses. And I immediately had an empathy with family-owned businesses from some past and present sort of family members of myself and through my life and different things I've experienced. So I've seen what's gone well, but I've also probably seen more of what's gone terribly wrong. So straight away I knew when family businesses, At the time, they didn't talk to one another. They didn't. There's a lack of trust of who can they talk to, and so for that reason, they just stick their heads down and just get on with it.
Do you know what? Before we go on further, can I ask? Is there a correlation you notice between how well these families got on and how long they've been in business? Like, is it like first generation starting up, or is it as they've been passed down? Is it people start to disagree more?
It varies.
It varies,
right.
yeah. No, and probably more as we go through this, and we can talk around some of the scenarios, you'll see where the variations come.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think the really common thing on that, which is probably really important at this stage, is there might be a generation that's fallen out at their generation level, but the next generation are just caught up with that, because obviously their mums and dads and brothers and sisters didn't speak. So because that's the case, they don't speak. But actually, a lot of them don't know the core of what was the original. So that's quite...
Just sticking to it.
That's a common dynamic in families.
Wow.
Yeah. So going back to how it first started, we started off the back of meeting individuals, and again driven by them. They were sort of saying it'd be great to get to know some other family businesses in the area and just share our stories. So we got some seed funding through the Growth Hub at the time, really to help run some events, and it was also helping sort of with other work that they were doing across the region. So we started running what we called our family business insight events. So a family business would open their doors to another family business and others, and you'd create straight away. We just created this sort of trusted environment where suddenly people would open up to one another, and actually the most powerful learning was they were learning off each other because they could resonate with what had happened with another family. And so that was really how it started. It was through insight events, and then it evolved into wanted to look to put on a conference, because everyone kept saying, well, we have to go to London to go to the family business conferences. So, well, okay, we'll put something on in the north. So we put a conference on, and it was just in the prep of running that. And this at the time was myself and just some others who I'd got through networks and family businesses helping me put something together because they wanted it. So this where it comes about championing the sector. And with that, I noticed that there was an accountancy group called Armstrong Watson that had a family business survey. And I thought, well, that'll be interesting to share sort of other results of what other families are thinking from a wider audience of what we'd got coming to the conference. So off I trotted to the office in Kendal, which was near where I lived, and knocked on the door and spoke to one of their partners there. And they were like, absolutely, would love to be involved. But I think before we go any further, you need to meet Dave Clarkson. Because I think when you meet Dave, one, you're both speaking the same language around family businesses, and two, I think possibly you're on the same track. And so that's actually how our worlds collided, really, wasn't it?
Wow.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. So I got a call from, say, one of those partners and said, Dave, you need to meet Sue. I said, well, who is Sue? And said, she's talking all about family businesses and everything that you're talking about in the business. You need to meet. And it took a little bit of time, didn't it? To eventually,
nearly a year.
It took nearly, bizarrely, just busy doing all sorts of different things. But it took probably a year since that call to then we actually did catch up and saying, so what are you doing? And then Sue was explaining all about family businesses and the opportunities and wanting to develop a conference and do all sorts of things. And I went, I'm doing that too. There's an opportunity here. So the business I was in, I've always led on business development, developing businesses, fascinated by businesses. But in particular, the business I was working with, predominantly the client base was family owned. And I really wanted to understand the family side of that because they worked very differently to non-family businesses. So I discovered there was a professor of family business. Right, wonderful. So I met this professor and she shared with me all of her learnings from around the world, and that there was a certain thread and commonality to all the challenges that families had. But they also had these incredible ways of operating and working that wasn't kind of out of the business book. So I really got to study them and doing a lot of work around it. And then when the call came in about meeting Sue and she was sharing what she was doing, I said, well, we were going to do the same sort of thing, but Sue was ahead of me. So doing the right thing.
He's never forgotten that.
for the right reason, I went, you know what, I'll take that step. And Sue was taking the lead on that. I said, look, really, there's an opportunity here. And our present businesses just aren't getting it. So we decided to collaborate on a number of things, almost behind the scenes in terms of the day job. It was actually, look, there is something more in this. There's a need. We understand that we were providing business services, and a lot of families don't engage with the business world, don't engage with corporate world. They're not interested. They learn from each other. So family learn from other family members. And exactly what Sue was doing, encouraging them to talk to other family businesses. They would learn from them. They would happily sit in a room and share everything, literally open up about everything. The honesty was always incredible. But from a business perspective, no, they'd shut down. They wouldn't really share. So I continued on in my corporate world for a number of years behind the scenes. We were developing what this could be, what the family business community could actually be, and develop it.
Probably, just a really good impact, and from a business, understanding the family business sector in those very early days was the first conference that we did. Eventually, our worlds collided and we came together and ran. We had a family business that was speaking. He'd never spoken on stage before, and he was talking about the fact that he'd come in and he'd literally sacked his dad the day that he took over the business. Yeah. And as he was, suddenly we looked around this room, this auditorium that was full, and you could have heard a pin drop. It was silent. And suddenly you start to think, this is something. I think it was that moment for both of us that was wow. And they'd come with a presentation. They sort of ditched the presentation, and he just sat on a stool and went, I'm just going to tell you all how it is. And it was almost like he was having a conversation like this and there wasn't 80 other people in the room.
That is fascinating because before we started shooting, you mentioned some of that never crossed my mind. You think family businesses are lovely. I just think of, me and my brother Sam, we get along great. Oh, isn't that lovely, But like you say, when you think about it a little further, and what you guys see is drama, family dramas.
And it was at that moment that I think, it was like, something has to happen here. This thing which we were creating, we didn't know what it was, but it has to move forwards because there's so much more that we could do to help and champion and support the sector. Sorry, I thought that was really relevant.
No, it's absolutely. So we started to identify more and more families that wanted to share their stories, and they wanted to share them for others to learn from. And the common thread there, they'd never shared them before. Now, there's everything in the business books that people would read, how someone had an idea and then they developed that idea and it all worked and they made loads of money and then they just wrote the book about it. Now, you see those people on stage all the time. It doesn't happen like that. That's not reality. You're kind of missing out all the bits in between. With families in particular, there's a real honesty. They will share everything. Just the challenges, the highs, the lows, the fallouts, everything. That is real learning. And family to family in a room, listening to that, it's a reassurance. It just helps them through the really tough times, because more than ever before, as people know, private sector business is really hard. There is no easy fix to doing it, but families have been through it and they are so resilient. And that's what we loved at the time, that all of those stories of when it gets tough, what did you do? Because that reassures so many other people and other families would learn from it. So as we started to develop it, more families came forward, said, one, I'd like to share my story. What we've heard, that's us right now. Could you connect us? And that absolutely became the core to all of this, isn't it? That a family will come to us now with a particular scenario, whether it's about growth or development, or they're in a really emotional challenge state right now. And we connect them, first of all, with another family that we will know. And when we talk about family, people always think about small. You talk about family businesses, everyone kind of thinks about minutiae. When we talk about family and family businesses, we're talking about large scale, 4th, 5th, 6th generation businesses. So we say, look, we're going to introduce you to a family. They've been through something similar, and it's the best thing for them to do, to go and talk to them. And you get a real thank you. That has just been so helpful to us, reassuring us that we're not going mad, that there is a way out of this. And we help facilitate that and grow and develop it from there.
Yeah.
So born out from that, it's grown into more advisory support work that we will do now directly. We bring in other partners that can come in and help and support. We continue to build those connections, and it's just grown from county to region to UK, and now out to rest of world, which is a really interesting journey we're on now.
I think so. I came into it to give some context. So even though the family business community is 10 years this year, which is fantastic.
Congratulations.
We're really proud of that fact, because it's, and we're proud of it because it's something we've been able to do for not just us, but it's for the family business sector, which is absolutely the key. And I think in 2017, before then, I was sort of part-time really with it and had my other business. I moved away from my other business and moved into running the family business community full time with Dave very much there, but because of his corporate world at the time, he couldn't be in it full time.
What about did you formalise it and like come up with the name and all sorts?
Well, we were originally the Family Business Network Limited, but and we still are on Company's House, but we trade as the family business community. And actually, what I'm about to tell you probably will give some context to why we changed our name. So 2017 came in full time. Dave came in 2019 full time into the business, and we sat. Actually, it was in in a room. We got a flip chart. We love a flip chart, and we basically, both of us, and it was a really interesting exercise because even though we'd worked together for a number of years by this time, a bit like families, sometimes they've never actually had that conversation. They've never asked each other, what do you want? And so we stood there with our pens, and actually both of us, without even discussing it before, just reamed off exactly the same. We wanted to be the most trusted family business network in the world. That is what we wanted to work to.
And if you write that down, it was sort of like, right, if that's what we are, how did we get there? So you now backfill, you kind of go, right, if that's where we are, how the journey to getting there, and that's exactly what we're doing right now. So you sort of have that in your mind that's where we want to get to, and people always talk about destinations, etc. But we're both in agreement, we never do anything small time. It has to be usually driven by someone saying, you can't do that. That's not possible, or you can't do that. That drives us on. So we go, we can, we've written it down, therefore it'll happen. And we started to develop all of that. It's been kind of interesting developing it from there.
And probably where we are now, that's to give context for your listeners, we have an audience of over 4,000 family businesses that's growing daily, and there's big plans to grow that worldwide, on a global scale. That's where we're moving with this. We want to connect family businesses across the world, because we talk about connecting and learning and sharing, sort of say from a UK base. Actually, a lot of these businesses are doing business all over the world. Again, remove this. It's a small family business. Even the smallest of family businesses to the largest of family businesses have clients and customers all over the world. And so we want to ensure that we can help make that path easier for them. So it's almost creating that corridor to help them access other family businesses across the world. So that the network and the peer groups and that side of family businesses is really important. We celebrate family businesses through our regional awards, and soon to be some other news on global scale. And then obviously the main part of our work, which is really, I'd say the last few years has really established, is all the bringing the knowledge and experience that Dave and I have got from over 30 years plus from both of us and what we've worked on with family businesses and just our knowledge. And we, work to sort of support families on the private advisory side.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you guys both have amazing backgrounds in business development, an insane wealth of knowledge, you must be picking up absolute golden nuggets daily from speaking to this many businesses that have had generations worth of things that they've not learned from a business book.
We do, and it's an interesting, and I'll just take it back to a point. It might be interesting for people listening into this as well, that I do remember the day when I put the call in Sue and said, right, we're going to do this. And I was in a world where I was paid a lot of money in a role, and you kind of get trapped in this world of being paid a lot of money, but really not enjoying what you're doing every week, just not enjoying the week after the week after. You get in a real trap. And there was this opportunity and thinking there's something out there that we can go for that others haven't really been looking at. So let's do it. So I remember going home to the family and just saying, that's it. I'm just walking away from the board. I can't. This could be financial suicide, but I have to do it. And I put the call in and I just said, right, this is it. I have no way. I'm not generating any money from this day forward unless we make this happen. And that's what we did. So literally driving down that road and thinking, there's the whole world here. There's an opportunity. We can make this happen. We've written down the piece of paper. And testament, I'm going to say, our mantra is very much about focus, discipline, and courage. If you can put those three things together, you can go out and do something, because that's exactly what we've done. And in the context of that, that's exactly what we now do with a lot of those businesses. We say we're very privileged to invite it into them, but what we also introduce them from, in some ways, from a world of chaos that often these businesses will have. They've not done something by the book, if you like, out of a university or a business course. This is how you run a business. They've kind of just all the time decided on where the business is going to go from the breakfast boardroom table, and growing and developing it. It's just grown and developed. So we help them with a lot of discipline and focus and reimagine the business again and develop it from there.
And we make them cry.
We do.
Yeah, daily. Yeah, daily. Yeah, wait up, Joe. It might be your turn. We tend to have. There's generally not a day that we've not gone by and make someone cry, and everyone's like, "Gosh, that must be really depressing." And it's like, no, because actually, some of those tears and that emotion that we're drawing out is the fact, and this is where we're very privileged and humbled, I have to say, that we're able to make things change and make a difference and add value back to that family in the fact that they might not have spoken for years, or they might not have talked about a particular subject, and through ourselves working together, are very much that dynamic of Dave and I sort of working with the families together. And, we have other sort of teams that work with us as well. But it's just really sort of getting them to draw out and actually facilitating those conversations. Yeah. And then once we've got the emotion, I have to say, you ask about nuggets, that's actually the nugget, to get the emotion, to get them almost to cross over that line, which then allows the more rational side to work on the business. And absolutely then that mantra of, it's the mindset, it's the focus, it's, your courage and your discipline.
So it's sort of like, we talk about families that can get into like these little sort of internal wars and all that. It's getting people over that hump sort of thing so they can then focus on what really matters to drive things forward on a practical sense. Yeah,
often in family businesses, there are many things that they would like to say but choose not to say because it'll upset another party in the family. And imagine any family out there, all of us at family gatherings, there are certain things that just don't get talked about because you don't
want to... what?
Well, we're talking about so you'll know each family member and the nuances of those individuals, but it might be something that's happened in the work environment and you don't want to share that matter because it'll really affect the business in some way. It really does kick off. We're talking about here about anger, frustration, all sorts of things go on behind the scenes. So people choose to, look, I won't raise it because I know what my dad's like, or I know how my mum will react, or my brother. Oh, he'll really go after me.
Is this even like massive companies where there's a lot?
Yeah.
All right, because that's interesting. So me and my brother, so Sam, we know when we're business partners, we know when we're brothers, and we know when we're friends, and we're able to just instinctively separate them three. And I guess I never thought about it.
There's a lot that can't.
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot that can't separate it, and actually sometimes that's what they come to us for. It's like, how do we work through this? So
even when they've got, in some cases, millions riding on it, tons of employees,
and also sometimes as a family, the next, I'm going to say typical. It's not a typical scenario. I'm just going to use this, but there's, the parents and the siblings, and they're all in the family business. The siblings sometimes just want their mum and dad back. And what they don't want is work mum and dad. They want, they want their mum and dad. And actually, what they can't do is, actually sometimes even talk to them about that. Even though they might be really close, it's just having that conversation. Or it's just a case of, well, we want the business to do well, but actually we need you to take a step back. That's, and again, it's facilitating and almost mediating some of those conversations.
Yeah, it's when we need mum and dad to leave, how do you start that conversation? We can talk at home about family matters, but how do we then sit down and say, look, mum, dad, the best thing for the business right now is for you to step away. That's a hard conversation. And likewise, the other way around, we've come across a number of generations where they never wanted to be in the business. It was just never, it was assumed that they'd always be continuing to run that business. They were never asked. They almost reference it as a hostage to the business, because the conversation didn't take place. I'm now running this business that I didn't want, but I don't want to let my parents down. So it's working with them a way forward to develop that from there.
That sounds like something you see it in movies actually and things like that. But it's interesting to hear you work with people like that. And do you know what I mean? Sorry, I want to let you go on for what you're about to say there, but I do want to touch on the actual services you offer, and I assume this is part of what you do, consultations and whatnot. So we can touch on that after. Sorry, Sue, what were you going to say there?
Well, it was just to carry on really from Dave's point on that in terms of those conversations. It can go the other way where, from the work that we do with that family, we always say if we were standing on stage, we break marriages, we save marriages, we remove family members, we do friends reunited, because we do have some good stories too. And I think that's really, people think that can't go on, and you think of programs like Succession and things. It does, and so that just resonates with the point that you said there. It does go on, but a lot of people might not necessarily see that for obvious reasons in the front face. So.
Wow. So please do tell me a bit more about the services you guys offer. And I know you mentioned how you decided one day, right, that's it, we're doing this. I don't make money from now on unless we go out there and do it. So how did you structure the services? Like you say, a lot of it kind of came to you. There was a real need for what you guys offer. So please tell me about how you started putting it together.
Okay. So the initial ideas, because things move over time, and like naturally with any business, you start off with one or two ideas and develop it. So originally it was about connecting families, so i.e. finding a family business that was willing to open its doors and for other families to come along and learn from them, listen in, have a tour around, etc. So we'd ticket that as an event. We'd do audience with events, so we'd get a family on stage sharing their story, and it'd be a paid for event, again, for people listening in. And that, at the time, those sort of events, again, were highly prized by people because they know how open and honest that family would be on a stage sharing to the rest of the audience. So it was lots of events-led work, which then sort of took us into the awards side of things, which from there we kind of, in a business world, we'd always used to all these corporate events where they'd kind of go, and now for the Family Business Award. And we go, look, hang on a minute. all sectors are family businesses, really. So there should really be a family business awards, full stop, in all of the sectors, and it didn't exist. So through those families, they said, we'd like our own awards, not be part of something else, because they didn't really contribute into those corporate events. So we created that on a local level first of all.
Yeah, originally it was the Cumbria Family Business Awards, and then we evolved it to then become regional, because there was only so many counties that you can start to do. So in 2020, early 2020, we ran the first Northwest Family Business Awards, about 3 weeks before the world changed. But we ran the first Northwest, and then we, in the latter 3 years, we're just about to deliver year 3 in November of our Yorkshire and Humberside Family Business Awards. I think the awards part of what we do is, one, yes, it's driven by the family businesses. And I think, just to note, one of the families that asked us about doing those awards, like, could you create something? We still engage a lot with that family to this present day, so that our relationships aren't short term, they're long, they're almost legacy. There's legacy relationships there. But from the awards, so every year 80% of the businesses that engage with the Family Business Awards we've never heard of before. So
and importantly, a lot of these families have never engaged in awards before. It's something that they've just got on, did what they did as a business. This is what we do. They've never really thought about it in that way.
And you think they all finally just felt heard when this kind of thing came out?
So they'd all start to get involved, and then through the awards process and processing and developing it, it's grown and grown to a point where, certainly on our Northwest side, you'll get 500 plus in a room of families who connect and see other families, and they start to interact with each other, and they finally go, oh, we get it now. We are a part of this community, and could we talk to that family? And we knew that business, but we've never talked to them. Yeah. Could you introduce us? And they actually start to commercially engage with each other and work together. We're talking about here about a family on one hillside versus a family on another hillside, would always have been aware of each other, but have never actually talked, never mind sort of work together or anything.
I think one thing we both really love is, we might, not hear about those stories until 2-3 years later. And then someone will come back and go, and we'll see something in the press and think, oh yeah, they were involved with the awards. And then actually when we talk to them, it's like, well, it's through yourselves, it's through your community that we met. And that's brilliant. That's the feel good side of it. And the awards, they're a really important part of our whole business, because it's, like we said, we can't talk about a lot of what we do, but the awards is absolutely one thing that we can talk about, and it's a true celebration of the sector. It's not corporate. It's, there's lots of entertainment, and it's a celebration, and we want to make, through the whole experience, every family business feel really special and that they've got a voice. And for businesses that have never had that before, it's eye-opening, and that's really humbling as well, to watch them grow.
And I think, it's important. I mean, there's an organisation out there that looks after and lobbies and researches in all the large corporate families out there. But really for us, it's the mid-tier families. It's the micro businesses, all family businesses. We're talking about millions and millions of private sector businesses, of families who don't have a voice, who don't know who to go and talk to, will just choose to get on and do what they do. Heads down, let's just really graft, and let's just do what we do. Now they realise there is a community out there that they can talk to and engage with and get advice and support just from fellow business owners. And we help facilitate that. So that's how it's all sort of developed from a community side of things. And then probably over time, because they opened up to us a lot more, I think from both of our previous backgrounds in business, we kind of, well, that's quite straightforward to us. What you need to do is X, Y, and Z. And I go, well, we've never done that before. Or
is this like a business development kind of practical advice, or like consultation sort of thing?
Just general business. I mean, we don't. sort of Dave's world famous for his one pager, and I'll let him talk about his one pager. And it's mapping that journey out, and they've never done that before. What do they need to do? And it's what's business critical, and what's the nice to do, and that's the discipline.
Are these even mindset. Some like massive companies that have been going on for generations? There's Correct. Some things that they don't know.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, often, and I think the point, Joe, is they do know, but they're just not doing it.
Right.
And what it takes is, and that'll sit there for years. They know what they need to do, but they're choosing not to do it. And so many of us in every kind of day would kind of factor in on those sort of things. So back to this whole thing about, to us, it would be business critical and not. And what we need to be doing every day is 2 or 3 significant things that are going to make this business go forwards. But everybody, and the trap people will fall into, I don't know whether it's a trap, it's probably the wrong word, but will choose not to, is back to the focus and discipline side of things. I know what I need to do, I'm choosing not to do it. So we map out simply, we just draw out an A4 page or on the big sort of sheet in front of them, draw out the journey. So what are you trying to achieve? Right, let's put that down. And it's a whole number of things. And on that, some people will talk about monetary value. We say, look, park that bit. It's not all about money in the bank. What is success? And our definition of success we'll always give to them is success is about having choices. The more successful you are, the more choices you have. A lot of people in life don't have choices at all. Yeah. So have choices, and the other thing we'll add on to that is control of your time.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
those
that.
2 things.
I love that because I think about money a lot because business owner, everyone in my world, it's money. Yeah. What do you want to do with that money? Afford time.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
And have the choices to do,
to do what
where,
you want
where you would
time.
choose to eat, where would you choose to go on holiday, where would you just choose to, at the weekend, what shall we do? Well, we have choices to do something. If we get this right, if we get this business right, those choices grow and develop. And if we get that bit right, our choice of time comes into our control. So that's kind of all those things that they're looking to work towards, right? If that's where we're getting to, we then map out what's everything that you need to do. And they'll always put it down, everything. Oh, there's this, or this. Right, let's not put it in a sense of order. Let's just put down everything, the biggest to the smallest. Put it all down there, right? In order to get that, what are the key things that we need to do? And then we map them out on the page. Right, okay, what's stopping you? And it's usually some sort of disagreement or something's happened over time.
And that's interesting, actually, because if, when you go through that process with them, what that also identifies is some might not be ready to get to that process because there are some underlying emotional issues. Yep. And I would say probably, it does vary, but 60 to 70% of our work is the emotional side. And the remainder is working on exactly what Dave was just talking about then, the business rational.
Did you predict that when you started doing this, or is it a surprise that you'd have to be working on the emotional stability of your network, your clients?
I don't think it was a surprise. I think it's probably more of a surprise to us at what we end up doing some days. But then it feels very natural. We just go in and we just do it. So sitting with families who've not spoken to each other, or sitting with a family who actually get on really well, but what they've never done is written as part of a succession, is they've never written down, what's the family book, what's the handbook, what's that magic source, which, in legal governance terms is the family constitution. So, but it's called many things with our families. It's the family agreement, the family charter. And that's taking them through a process to address exactly what the family want. Because if you understand what the family want, that then helps the next generation or the current generation that are leading the business. Yeah. And then you can start looking at, well, what's this one pager? What do we want to achieve? And then But
I think we find often we find the blockers. Because we look at it and we go, well, that's quite straightforward, isn't it? You look at the business and what you need to do, but you're just not doing it. So you'd sort of said, so priorities, they're there. Then you see the room and you see them looking at each other and you see the body language and things like that, and you go, oh, okay, right. can we just talk about that? So, and we kind of open up and say, look, it's interesting, you know, arms folded and you're staring across there, you're not looking at them. Can we just ask? And we facilitate, and they start to open up a little bit about why they don't do something. Well, Dad would never let us do that. Or I remember it's just something we just don't do. Well, let's explore that a little bit further. Why don't you do it? Well, it's always been the family way. We're not going to go down that avenue. So you start to challenge it a little bit and break it down, so we can get that sort of A4 piece of paper plan underway. It's finding the blockers, which tend to be emotionally charged in some way, hasn't been discussed before. They don't know how to discuss it themselves, but we get them to share that and open up and go, right, okay, now we've kind of aired that in the room, can we move forward? And it's always permission-based.
Yeah, everything has to be permission-based. And I think to help give some context because Dave and I do a lot, but we don't do everything, you know, and we sort of the work we do, you know, you talk about picking those emotional signals up. I might pick something up while Dave's leading on a conversation that he's not. So then, I mean, all we need to do, to be fair, is just look at each other with one eye, or not even that sometimes. We know what our body language is. We've worked together for so long, so we can sort of finish each other's sentences. But that's great when we're in a room, because when we're in a room working with a family, we know sort of how to work, and we can pick something up so then nothing gets missed. Because I have to say, the big learning is, you know, never presume that you think you know everything about that family. Because trust me, that suddenly there'll be a meeting and at the end you think it's finished. And then they'll just be, just one more thing. Can I just talk to you about this? And that one sentence that might come out from that family member might just change that whole conversation that's just happened, because they thought, well, I thought you'd know. I didn't think it was relevant. And that's quite a common occurrence, isn't it? Well,
do you know, it's getting so juicy now, this. Do you know, I was thinking just then, so you could go into a family business with this perfect business development plan, and you're there, you're ready to lay it all out, but I guess, you know, something to me, little do you know, that's not the problem. They maybe do know what they're meant to be doing, but it's the emotional blockers. Do you know that I did think a minute ago when you were talking about this, Dave, that the people who know what they should be doing but don't do it, that sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, more like a luxury afforded by people that have a business that's kind of set up and systemized and handed to them. From a generational thing, I can't think of a world where I just can afford to not do something because I'm in a mood with Sam. You know what I mean? What's the deal with that?
There is an element of luxury sometimes in an established business. You know, we were with a family only last week, and with the father and the next generation, and the father had built a phenomenal business from nothing, and he'd handed it over to his son, and the son had done an incredible job growing and developing it. And you can sort of see that the business had moved on considerably from where the father had seen it, but an absolute pride, wasn't there, in his son and how he'd taken it further forward and developing it. But that's not often the case. It goes off in a different tangent. And then by the time you get to a third generation, you know, almost a cliche would be first generation creates the business, the initial idea. Second generation really grows and develops it, and it becomes something, you know, pretty substantial. Third generation tends to have only ever known, kind of always had money around and things, whatever they wanted to do, choices available to them, because there's always been this level of opportunity or wealth behind that business. Yeah,
because how could someone develop that necessary graft and drive if they haven't had to be in the trenches themselves? I often wonder, I mean, you know, we're not a particularly big company, but, you know, every quality that I like about myself has come from, you know, baptism by fire sort of thing, being, wow, I have to figure this out, I have no choice.
And I would say on that, the majority of certainly businesses that we deal with, that attitude is very much there. There's not many we've certainly not come across where there's just a presumption that they're going to walk into this family business without actually doing anything. More and more are because actually what the current generation are wanting, the new generation, as we call it, coming into the businesses, they don't want them to run the business exactly how they have, especially as time's evolving. There's lots of new skill sets, and what the business that they inherited to take forwards is a very different business now that the next generation has got to take forwards. So actually they have to go and get other skills or seek that experience from others to then be able to look at, well, what is the business moving forwards? How can we keep relevant and interesting?
Yeah, we call it, it's the speed of change. So you can imagine a business that maybe has been run for the last 45, 50 years, decades went by and things didn't really change that much. The business has always done what it's always done. And then those decades turned into, people used to do 10-year plans and then they used to do 5-year plans. And now for us, we'll work on a 3-year plan with somebody, but I'm going to say in all honesty, there are things that change in the world every 6 weeks that affect your business. Literally, things happening all across the world all the time. Now, an established generation kind of can't necessarily deal with that, and technology and everything now. So the younger generation would maybe be coming into the business in a much later period of time, but now we're placing more of the next generation around that boardroom table in their late 20s and early 30s. That didn't used to happen because of the speed of change of everything in business and what's happening. They need that knowledge because the past generation hasn't had that and had to deal with it. So there's a definite shift in now, certainly a younger generation. And when we talk about people putting in these NED roles into businesses, it's actually not I'm going to say the aged, wise individuals now. The NED roles that we're placing into businesses tend to be a much younger generation because of dealing with the world as it is now.
Yeah, the game is changing
completely,
constantly.
Yeah.
But I think a really interesting point on this as well is that what we're learning as we're taking our global journey, actually, interestingly enough, the UK is known for its history, its legacy, many generations of family businesses. When we were over in Abu Dhabi and Dubai and sort of Saudi and around there, it's not old there. Their oldest business, I think what they said was 120 years, but the country itself, like Abu Dhabi and things, it's sort of 50 years.
Literally 50 years in the making.
So what they're now wanting to learn, which was something that, every day is a learning day. And for us, you talk about that business development journey and what it is, actually what other cultures are wanting to learn. And you've obviously got to take into consideration depending on which country it is, all the things that go with that and the different laws and the different culture. But they're wanting to learn about, well, what does it actually look like to be a 3rd, 4th, 5th generation business? So it's quite interesting. There's quite a shift change in the fact that when we go out of the UK, we've almost got to go back into, I would say, probably what traditionally some of the challenges they used to have and educate on those. Whereas in the UK, it's much more now about bringing the new generation in around the table and different skill sets to help keep the business current and relevant and move forwards.
Right. Yeah. Do you know, I would like to talk about, you mentioned the goal is to be able to, I can't remember exactly your phrase, afford choices effectively.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that? I want to talk about business development and how you would actually go about structuring. Again, whether it's my business, your business, anyone else's, there must be some common threads amongst them all, how you would go about this and tidy up a business. Let's say all emotional drama has been sorted and you're like, right, let's get you making money now so you can afford choices. You can choose what you're going to do. What's the deal? Where do you start with that?
Well, it's structuring the businesses. I'll probably take that back to during the COVID times. What became very interesting, there was lots of businesses out there which were really, really struggling, naturally. But the more we were doing radio and doing loads of different things at the time, people saying, what do we do? What do we do? And we said, look, if anything, this gives you time to look on that business. If you're either setting up a new business or an established business, where are you adding value, genuinely? Because people were getting kind of complacent and just doing what they'd always done, whether it's products, just selling the same products, same services being delivered. But actually, in order for a business to grow and develop, it needs to stay relevant. So you need to be looking all the time at where's our audience going. A lot of what Sue and I do in our business, we stay relevant because we are driven by our audience telling us, what are they looking for? What can you help us with? So the business itself needs to say, right, where are we adding value as products and services? So talking to the customer base again.
And just for full clarity, just why would people want to work with you? Why would people want to buy from you? That's it.
Yeah. That's it. It is back to who are you? And society has changed a lot in terms of looking at a business of how it acts and behaves as well. The very, very different sort of view on things now of how that business is because of the whole environmental side of things. There are so many things. People are a lot more sort of socially conscious of different things too. So we'd always work with that business going, what are your current services or product range? Which ones are you adding value? Where are you actually making the money? Right? Who's responsible? And another interesting point always within that business as it's starting to scale up, role, responsibility and accountability. People often will have a role. They won't necessarily be clear on what their responsibility is. And they're certainly not clear on, well, I didn't know I was accountable for that. That's not under my remit.
And I would add on to that as well, there's accountability, but also if there's a business where there's no consequences, that also is
I was going to say, can you dive a little deeper on accountability because it's clear, role, responsibility, they're both very obvious. Accountability, tell me a bit more about that one. Like what, accountable for yourself or you keep each other accountable?
Well, in terms of accountability, so I know what you're saying, it's obvious about role and responsibility. Genuinely, and we're talking about going into very sizable businesses, don't have that paperwork in place, don't have those things in place. Or in a smaller business, it's in people's heads. They're walking around, well, I know what my role is. I know what I'm responsible for.
Or I just do everything.
Yeah. Well, we talk about this all the time. Like, what exactly are you doing? All right, so you take care of that now, and it is verbal agreements.
But then
that's it. So it's not written.
The accountability side comes into it because it's, well, there was an well, that's your role, that's what you're supposed to do, but you've not done it. Yeah, sorry about that. Just didn't have time. I've got so many things on. Yeah, but the effect of that, has affected the business. So there has to be a consequence to that rather than that continue to go on. So you have to, you've not done that. You need to be an understanding. And certainly if it's in a smaller business, the effect on the business financially by you not actually doing that one thing, which, that was business critical. We'll go back to those kind of phrases again.
Yeah, so coming full circle, is this where you make people cry?
Yeah. This is whole, you said you would do that, and it just didn't happen. So the role, responsibility, accountability bit is very, people need to look at themselves and go, exactly what is my role? From what I started off to what I'm doing now, we've not really looked at it again. If I don't do something, I need to look at the other people around the table. And if I haven't done it, am I going to accept that that's actually affecting them? Or am I going to choose to come up with every excuse as to why I've not done it? And if I do that twice over, if no one's going to challenge me, I'm going to continue, and therefore forms bad behaviour. It kind of, people go, oh yeah, that's how they are. That's the way it is. So we then start to get within that business, the culture. Right. Okay, from the top, the cultural aspect to this, from the very beginning, what are we agreeing to? How are we going to act and behave with each other as a business and to our customer base? Because if we don't have all of that in place and we don't pick up on each other, we don't challenge each other on it. And again, this is happening all over these businesses. They're accepting this behavior. They're not challenging it. And therefore, the business itself deteriorates. So we kind of lose what we set out to do. So you have to keep reappraising the business, what it's doing. And that just hasn't been happening.
So you want to be running from the negative consequences of the accountability, but running towards your North Star.
Yeah.
Constantly, yeah.
Yeah. And part of it, that historically with the businesses, we found that they've managed the business. So they've managed process, managed a business, therefore managed people. So we now look at that in certainly from a business development perspective. You've got to look at managing to our mind, and think about that, what that word is. Managing is about just getting by, just managing. We're managing to do that. We're managing to get by and do it. Managing process, right? Lead people. So it's a very different thing. Management and leadership are two things together.
I was just about to say, in
business.
my head, management would mean, I guess, keep sticking to your systems as much as you can.
Yeah,
processes.
absolutely.
Systems, processes, procedures,
yeah.
all of that, back to the whole roles, responsibility, accountability. All of that, there is governance and procedure that you do need in place. The larger you get, the more grown up you need to be as a business, really. But outside of that, it's now the generation, it's about not managing people anymore, it's about leading people. And leading takes a different skill set. And the vast majority of people haven't really looked at that. How do I motivate? How do I develop someone? How do I listen to them and understand what drives them? All of those sort of things. It was seen as, look, that's not necessary. They're paid to do a job. Just get on and do your job. People have changed considerably. It's probably always been there, but driven now with a lot of the businesses that we work with, it's all about very much, okay, yeah, being paid's one thing, but being valued is another, and being developed. Yeah. That's the Holy Trinity. All three things together, balanced all the time. Okay, I'm paid adequately enough for what I do, but I know I'm valued because I keep being told so. Or it keeps being referenced.
It's not so much being told sometimes, it's actually actions that are happening that makes people feel valued.
I was going to say, you would feel it.
It's not about being told, it's you feel it.
That's
it's
it.
a feeling.
You'd feel it in the business that you are, there's so many different ways of doing it. But then also being developed, that I feel that I'm learning all the time. Now that keeps the people engaged and part of it.
Is that the essence of a leader, a business leader, as far as you guys see it?
Is there to absolutely inspire, but a leader is there not to tell you what to do. A leader is there to actually create an opportunity for you to grow and develop. That's the art form to it. And we probably spend a lot of our time now in those businesses doing a transition
so it's the structures.
Working on the structure. Yeah. So getting the structure right, all the things that, we know we need to do that, but they've not done it. Right, let's make that happen first. Then it's about, let's look at the processes, who's actually managing them. But then, right, from a leadership level, because leadership is all the way through the business. Leadership skill set is at every level. And that is almost part of the magic.
Well, it's quite interesting, even just a language change, isn't it, for some businesses that we go in. And we might look at the structures of, so we've got, the family council, you've got the board, or, etc. And then you come down to the leaders of the business who are actually going to be delivering on that plan for you. And they call, quite often, a lot of them are called the SMT, the senior management team. And we're like, no, it's a leadership team. And even just sometimes changing that, the mindset can have a huge shift on some of the individuals and the family and the other sort of people in the business and that engagement, because they feel more valued, because they're being recognised for that.
And I think there's one that they fall into quite a lot is we found that they'll say, well, we've got the board meeting today.
Yeah.
And we go, board meeting today. So all day, and some are literally over 2 days. A board meeting for 2 days. The board is there for the significant decisions, the top line decisions. A board meeting should be an hour and a half. Doesn't matter what scale that you are, because this is all the top decision making stuff that just yes, no, or carry that over. It all becomes very kind of just operational.
It becomes operational, yeah.
Yeah, it literally comes operational, and they discuss everything. That's a different thing. So you have a board group, so that's strategic. Are we on the right path? Are we going in the right direction? Any significant decisions we need to make? You then have a leadership team. That's the operational stuff. Deal with all the actions. So it's a restructure of that business. Often the businesses will just have one group that deal with everything, from the biggest decision to the minutiae. And they'll be off-site for a couple of days, and then the business continues. There's a much better way of working.
Yes, if you've got a great leader and you have people incentivized to work because they get to experience growth, and we all know how rewarding that is, then I suppose you that's a way of taking care of all the minute things, because you have people that actively want to go out of their way to get the job done.
And the thing is, Joe, it's about, let's say, you knowing what you have permission to do. You've actually got clear permission to do things and make decisions. And people say, well, why didn't they do that? And so many times over, we find it in the businesses, well, they should have made that decision. They should have made that happen. But when you ask the person, they go, I've never been told that.
Yeah.
I've never been, I didn't know I was responsible for that.
And that's why, certainly in a family business, especially, and this is part of the discussion and very relevant, that a family business that's going through a succession or a change, that structure is really important. So you've got the structure of how is that business going to be made up. So people know they've got clear guidelines of what they can do or what they need to go back to the family to seek permission for. So that might, so it might be that there is the board or there's the leadership team as well, two different almost groups. And then what they have to do is the leadership team are there to sort of deliver on the plan. But the board might be there, as Dave says, it's that hour and a half making those decisions. But also in that, it might be there's some things we need to actually go and ask the family. So, because there might not be a family presence on that board, because it might be family owned but not family run.
Yeah, I got you. That makes sense.
And all of that is really important, going right down to, I'm going to say, to entry level into a business, whether you're family or non-family, to have those roles and responsibilities and accountability, but also consequences for when the accountability is not continued.
And I think there's a point on the value side of things as well. Everyone will have bandied round about, everyone knows about having a set of values and things like that. Family businesses or generational businesses will have a set of values, and those values were created when it was formed, and they've developed, and we'll walk around all the different offices spaces, don't we, in the manufacturing businesses, and they'll show all the values on the wall, but it's something, let's say, grandfather set up. Those values were great in that time, in those 50, 60 years ago. Those values were just, everything was run by that. But in terms of the world has changed, the services, the product lines, everything's changed. Those values aren't necessarily fit for purpose anymore. Those values helped us how we used to recruit. Well, again, the market has completely changed, and how people like to work has completely changed. So we found a lot of the time now, we've taken what were those values as a family and almost create a set of principles that generationally, what are those fundamental principles that we should stay true to, that great-grandfather or grandfather set up, that you still listen and hear from. But the actual other values, they become business values. Look at them again, widen them. Create opportunity that it might have said that originally our values are that we'd always recruit locally, that we'd always work with local-based businesses, etc. Well, that limits you to recruiting some of the best people that could really work in your business, because they don't have to work in the office anymore. They could be remote. So you're creating different skill sets. And then you've also got, in terms of people you can operate with, because we do everything on screen now. We've done global conferences. We've talked to people around the world. We work with people around the world on screen, not just flying out there and having to be there. So that, again, your whole kind of values, it's changing and adapting them and opening up what you're going to do as a business. So I think we'd say eyes wider open originally.
Yeah, very much.
And now we'd reference it as eyes, so eyes wide open have become eyes wider open. So looking at the current business that you've got now, looking at it differently. Where are we adding value? What's our structure? Where's our marketplace? The people we've currently got, are they the right people in the right roles? Who else could we bring in? Because our opportunity to bring in others has grown.
And I think the most interesting question that you can ask a family business, or any business, I'm going to say family or non-family, is, and to really get you thinking, is, well, what's the purpose of your business? Why do you exist? And it's really interesting. If you ask that question, that can cause many a conversation, many other things that come off the back of that, because it really gets them to think. And we talk about, where do you add value? But actually you've got to understand, why do you exist?
Yeah.
What's the purpose of your business?
And it's interesting because there's two ways to look at that. There's, like
Yeah.
you said, there's your own personal one, which is to buy choices, effectively, to afford choices.
Yes.
But then there's the value you have in the world. Why would anyone want to purchase from you? And I suppose you need to be clear on both of them, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll hear it time and time again. And it's always out there. People say, so why are you in business? And they say, to make money. Well, if that's what it is, and you're talking to your customer base and saying to them, I'm in business to make money, hang on, they're not going to be around for long. So
I always say this, no one cares what you want. They get what they want.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they love you for what you do, then absolutely you will make money based on what they're doing. But again, stay relevant to what are they looking for, what is right for them. So you're in business to make sure that people are happy with what you're delivering. That's fundamentally it. Looking at it in different ways.
And I think, with the world today and everything that's going on, certainly at the moment within the family business sector, what we've just talked about is so important, because actually it is starting for businesses, for people to start to look eyes wider open. Well, what else? Don't just focus on the negatives. There are positives, but it's thinking bigger, thinking wider of what else you can do that will add value.
Yeah.
So
many traditional businesses are going, and people say it's a shame, but they've not sat around the table themselves and just going, that open question, whether it be at the board meeting or something, just going, right, everyone around the room, tell me, are we still relevant? And you're like, oh, I don't know, we just do this. We just do this all the time. Well, that's great for a time, isn't it? But stay relevant. That's ultimately, you need to ask yourself, this year we did this. Is next year, are we going to do exactly the same thing? Because they're moving all the time, that audience, and how they want to receive things, how they want to be marketed to. And you'll know that, Joe. It's just fundamentally, it's changed. How do people want to be communicated with? We do probably more on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And hardly anything on email.
WhatsApp and LinkedIn messaging now seems to be, for us, every business is different, but that rather than emails, it's interesting.
Big on that one. Do you know, it's funny actually, because sometimes it can be, deep and meaningful, and there's a lot to think about and ask yourself. Sometimes it's really simple. Like I was watching a video not so long ago about the dark history of the Guinness family, actually. That was really interesting. I learned a lot about them, and it's quite a lot of it's terrible actually, but sometimes it's just, people just love Guinness. As long as it continues to be an excellent beer,
that's
we're
it.
good.
On the outside, that's fundamentally it. It's, are we presenting value? Are we delivering value on the outside? On the inside, like I said, genuinely, and we firsthand, we see it all the time. What's going on inside the business? There's all sorts of things that whatever you'll see on a program, go, that is real. That is absolutely real. All these characters exist. But often the family will say, it's okay, nobody out there knows. No one knows this is going on. And we have to let them know. Everybody knows. All of your employees are aware of it. They sense it. They feel it. They just see it all the time. And they're worried. They're worried that you need to get this sorted out. Because the awards that we're running at the moment, it's themed as lifeblood. And there's a reason for that families recruit and employ and pay out to everybody in their local communities. They are fundamental to it, and it has gone on generational. Some of the areas that we're in, literally within a 2 to 3 mile radius, they are the biggest recruiter of everybody, therefore all the families in the area. So it's really important that family stays on track honest and true to each other, that all these other communities can thrive.
Well, yeah. Do you know what? It's funny. Like one of my weird personal interests is Titanic and like old ocean liners and stuff. And you look into that, and at one point, Harland and Wolff employed. It was like 50% of. You know what I mean? It was insane of Ireland. It was insane. But I guess I never really thought about it until you just said there. Yeah, some companies can recruit the majority of an entire area. Yeah,
and hence the community.
Yeah.
So and wherever you are in the world, there's a community, which is actually our thinking was driven. We talked about before, we were the Family Business Network, but then we became the Family Business Community. And part of that is the family business community is there because it's a network for family businesses.
Yeah.
But it's,
those families, they wanted to be part of something. We never, like for us as as an organisation, as a business, we didn't want to be a membership model. It's one of those things you end up sort of employing people to justify why you're the member of something. So we chose not to do that. But our audience are going, we don't feel part of you unless we do contribute in some way. So we compromised and created the subscription.
Again, our audience was leading us in terms of what they wanted.
Yeah. So we went out and we started filming lots of different stories of families sharing things, just all sorts of different things within their families that others would really learn from. So we've got all of these. We call it our Netflix for family business.
I did want to touch on that. I was looking on your services, and you do a lot of video stuff.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, where'd that come from?
So, that was really down to, I guess, originally we used to do a lot of audience with events and, real-time events. Now, events can be very time-consuming and logistically for people to get to. They said, look, I can't get to the event, but I'd love to hear the story. So we ended up then going around. We got
filming,
great sort of film side to actually go out, record all these stories, and they're still really heartfelt things, but not in the public domain. So it's in its own sort of space where others can just learn all of these different stories that aren't in the sort of the outside
It's the
world,
knowledge transfer.
Yeah.
Comes back to one of our favourite sayings. It is about knowledge transfer. And I think what we talked about is that we didn't want those to be in the public domain, because when people came to any of our insight events or audience widths, it was a paying audience. So you thought, well, you're not just going to put stories out there, especially some of these stories. They're really sensitive. They're very open, the families, and they're not things that they are happy to go in a public domain. So we had to really think, well, how can we then work this? And actually, that was a real driver for us introducing our FanBiz subscription, as well as family businesses telling us they needed to feel part of something. So when we created it, we really tussled, I have to say. We didn't want to call it a membership. We wanted to call it a subscription. So we never wanted people to justify that they had to be part of us. Yeah. Everything's been about flexibility. And so we decided, well, if we've got all this learning, all this content, this Netflix for family business, that's what people will want to subscribe to. So we, as any business goes through learnings, we've gone through learnings of what that price point is for that subscription and what it is, it shouldn't be. And then actually families telling us, you're not charging enough, it's not enough. So again, driven, we've reached where we want to be with it. And again, you come to this, you presume, you should never presume, people want the content, that learning. Actually, when we talked to the families that were subscribing, the family businesses and the individuals, they were like, it's not for that. That's part of it. It's actually for the fact that between yourselves and what you've built, we can connect with others within the community. Yeah. And it's the connection that they want.
That's what they highly prize.
Yeah. So that was why we introduced the subscription, because it wasn't there before.
Love it. So I want to jump back to, we'll bring this to an end soon, but one thing I want to mention is we're talking about, why are you in business, and there's the, your own personal sort of reasons, but then there's what you present to the world. And I've realised recently, there's nothing you can say or do to make someone want to buy from you. People buy what they want, when they want, and all you can do is make sure they think of you first. You actually provide something that people want. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that comes back to staying relevant, staying current.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of companies simply ignore it or overlook it because they're too caught up in the internal things?
Yeah, sometimes there's too much red tape for them to go through that. Family business is great in that way. The majority is that decisions, as long as the conflict isn't there, decisions can be made really quickly and things can be turned around. And I think for that helps them stay more, with guidance. They also to seek that support as well. I think that's right. You seek external support as well to give you a different thinking, to be able to stay current and stay relevant. And what else can you do?
I think I'll add to it a point, probably from my background originally, where I was more involved with brand and personal brands. And it is about how the business needs to look at and have somebody all the time looking at how the business looks, acts and behaves, how the individuals responsible for that business look, act and behave. consistently. If you've got it right with your audience, how you should act and behave, you have to realize that both within the business and out of the business, you have to be consistent. If you do that, you stay credible to people, and they really radiate to that. And that's really an important part to any business, that it kind of gets wrapped up in itself being more important than its customer base. And what it's doing is far more interesting to the business or the shareholders. Whereas what we need to be doing all the time is, and I suppose it's exactly for us in our reputation, how we act and behave. It's really important to us all the time, wherever we are. It's that consistency to us. And we have set expectations out there in the market, and we absolutely want to deliver on that. And we will not ever want to let a family down.
But that's interesting for us, as any businesses scale and grow. And we've also now introducing that to others who can be part of us, but deliver what we deliver in other parts of the world and other areas. And that's a real, a learning. And I think for us, but that's about us staying current, staying relevant. And as Dave says, that, how you look, act and behave. And I think it's just, as any business out there, don't forget why you're there, because actually that then helps you really drive forwards that vision. And for us, we wouldn't be able to do anything that we do without our family businesses. So whatever happens, the core of everything we do, and sometimes like anyone, you get a bit carried away. There's some shiny new things over there, and you're like, "Ooh, let's go for this." But as I have to say, I have Mr. Discipline sat to my left here. It is very much about, stick to plan. So, and he'll draw me back in and go, "No, stick to plan." But actually, the heart of what we do, and I think for any business, don't forget what is that essence. And for us, it's family businesses, because we wouldn't be here without them.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so guilty of that. I get so caught up in this new camera, that new lens, we need it for that. And I get basically caught up in the art of what I do, as opposed to what value are we providing to our customers.
Yeah.
Easy to do.
I think just probably one of the final points is one of the businesses or business owner that I'd met a number of years ago, and he'd 3 successful businesses, 3 individual businesses that he'd grown himself, developed on, sold, next one. By the 3rd one, I went to meet him and just said, Peter, if it's okay with you, how do you do that? It's very rare people have 1 successful business, never mind a 2nd and a 3rd. So I'm fascinated by how you've done that. And he just said, well, it's very easy. And he just, out of his top pocket, he took out an A4 piece of paper, which is where I've got my A4 piece of paper from.
It is.
He took it out, opened it up, and it had on it his current business that he was developing, and he'd written on it what it was and where he wanted to get to. And he said, I create that, and I get all some really great people to work with me on making it happen. But what naturally starts to happen is they all sit around that table and contribute and give me ideas. If I listened to those ideas and if I took them on, that piece of paper would get very, very complicated. So what I say to them is, let's all agree to get to the bottom of the page. And when we do, we'll turn it over, and all your great ideas will write on the other side, and we'll continue to grow the business. And it was the discipline, the focus on that has grown his 3 businesses. And I never forgot that. We have one A4 piece of paper.
We do.
We write an A4 piece of paper for every business that we work with, and we get them to stick to it. And if you stick to it, you actually get somewhere. And as Sue said, and we know so many people, lots of shiny things. What about this? What about that? You're going to spend a lot of time going all over the place, but you're not going to get even halfway down the page.
So what do you do with all the shiny ideas? Just put them on the fridge? Oh.
The shiny ideas are great. If you've got shelves, if you've got something, post-it notes, whatever.
Put them on.
Literally, that's a great idea, but not right now. Not to demotivate. That's a great idea, but we're not going to do it. That's a great idea, but we're just going to put it here.
I started a book one time for my shiny new ideas. And this is working together as we do. And usually we agree. Pretty much, I would say, on most things. But it's good for us not to agree at times. And I wrote an idea around and he looked at it in my book. And I was very proud because I was sticking, being disciplined. I wasn't just blurting it out. I'd written it down and thought about it. And then I presented it and he just looked at it and he went, yeah, we'll park that for another day. It didn't even make the shiny shelf, as we call it.
Wait, so can I just ask, with this single sheet, can you just walk me through it in clear detail? So, you start with where you are, obviously, and what you want. Are you talking about the social impact you want to make personally?
You could have a number of them.
Right.
Literally, what we've got here, you've got a business one. You've got, and it's literally always a start. Top left of the page, put your start. From that moment in time, going forward, start. What are we right now? Put an end to, where do I want to get to? You can put a timescale on it, or I would choose not to. Let's just put a destination. Let's not put, because you put your pressure on yourself. Oh, we must do, right, let's get to that in 6 months, in 12 months. Well, based on what? Because with everything that goes on in the world and in your own business, don't add a pressure, just add a destination. So we write the end, and the end is what? Is it financial? Is it about just a net profit increase? Is it just about having an additional? What is it at the end of this next period of time? What are we aiming for? Write that down. Top right of the corner, top right corner here, you've got who's the audience. So who are we doing this for? And don't forget your own people in this as well. So it's your customer base, but it's the people that are taking you on the journey with you, your team as well. That's in there. Then, bottom left-hand side, you're writing down everything about all the things that we can do and could do. But then importantly from it, practically, if we're going to get to this point, take out the things business critical that we have to get done, and then qualify each of them on a little journey all the way down the page. You do that as a business, you do a personal one, or we choose to, and we encourage others. So we do a lot of work with the individuals in the businesses, and we get them to write a personal version of that. But I think, works.
Take that into another context. Actually, sometimes you need to plan out a conversation that you're going to have. And you can use that.
You could do this for obviously your core overall business, and you then can do it for a
conversation, a meeting. What do you want to get from this? So you can use that tool for many, many things. But from the business, that one pager, and then once you've worked through to get to the end destination of there, you're already looking at the next one pager about what's that next destination. And it's about small steps. It's not just, as Dave says, taking on huge things and going, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. It's small steps and what's business critical, and how in applying and keeping that discipline and that focus on those.
We're with a business tomorrow, a family business, a large family, and we're going to go through that exact exercise again. It's a business planning day, but the outcome of which will be an A4 piece of paper.
Do you ever find you have to do multiple versions till you actually believe people like, yes, I think that is what you want? Because some people might start with something that's maybe a bit superficial or whatever.
You've got to be really honest. Everyone has to be really honest. Everybody wants to contribute. Everyone wants to be part of something. But you've actually got to be, it's a fair process that you run through with everyone, and also looking at it back to, obviously, the mantra that keeps coming in. Is that fundamentally business critical? Is it the left side of the page or the right side of the page? Is this really going to help us right now? Or is it something that we'd love to get done, but not right now? Which of that? Because we'll take all of that on board, but when we map it out, what are the fundamental things that we have to get done? And if we have capacity, we'll do some of the other stuff that we'd love to do as well. And so you have to kind of be quite honest with each other about it.
Yeah. What I love in those conversations sometimes is, it can be very busy with people firing ideas, and this is where I want to be, and this is what we want to do, and this, and then there's just one person, and generally it's a family member, I'm going to say, who's probably been there within the business for a while, and they just, it's
remains
almost
very quiet.
They remain quiet throughout the whole process. And then they've let everyone speak. And then they just come out with one sentence. And everyone just looks at them and goes, that's it. That's where it is. That's where we're getting to. But actually, that's the reason they're saying that is because that was the purpose, why they set the business up. That's where they wanted to get to.
Yeah, because it's all for the wrong reason. So many organisations we've been in where they bring all the team in, and right, by the end of today, and everyone fixes an end of day, right, by 5 o'clock, we will have a plan. So their goal is to have a plan by 5 o'clock. What that plan is almost becomes secondary then, right? So we just basically need to all say something and all contribute to something and have something there. And then by 5 o'clock, we've finished the plan and we can go home and get on and do what we always do. Because that was that planning day. But we can forget about that till next year again, can't we? But today I've been told to contribute to something that, well, how's it going to get us there? So say less, but with more relevance, I think, in those kind of discussions, and work on the plan together, not just work on what's the end result of this. You just want a plan. No, we want the plan.
The plan.
That's going to get us there.
Yeah. What's going to get us to that end destination.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll bring it to an end. But quickly, before we finish, what's the future looking like? What's next?
Well, we talked about eyes wider open. We've recently had our eyes, I can't, wider opened. I don't know whether that's the thing.
Opened wider.
Open wider, I was trying to say. Yeah, so we've always had a vision to be, connect family businesses across the world and develop what we've done here in the UK. And obviously, as I say, we're 10 years. We went across over to Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and there's future plans for other countries. We're in India in the new year and other places. And what we realised, I think, as our future is that what we've done here in 10 years, globally, we can create elsewhere in 18 months.
Yep.
And actually have that, you talk about impact and build more communities and deliver that. And so it's been a really interesting journey in that. So there's definitely UK, it's, well, what can we do to help boost the family businesses and connect more family businesses to everything that we do here, but now taking that on a global scale.
Yeah, as you said, 10 years to have an overnight success. You know the formula now.
That's kind of it, It's, but you've got to go through it.
Yeah.
There is no easy fix. Talking to people, talking to us, there's ways you can speed up the process, because it's a bit like you're doing, Joe, doing brilliant with what you're doing right now, capturing the essence of so many people, of those little things, those little nuggets.
This is literally these conversations.
Yeah.
It's like, I was thinking, how can I get a bunch of free consultations from people that are doing super well? Yeah. I know.
But we learn every day.
Yeah.
Every day we learn. And that's, we're both, avid learners in that respect. And that's very much a self-development and what we like to do. And we both learn in slightly different ways. We're
very privileged to be invited into some incredible businesses and the inner sanctum of them, and they're sharing their wisdom. We can then apply that to many other businesses. So it's always incredible what we carry around in our heads when we're sort of just talking to different people. But to now share wisdom, but also at the same time collect incredible wisdom from families from across the world, that's what we're going to continue to do now. It's the world over, all the businesses are exactly the same. From a business perspective, there only is slight differences from a cultural perspective, but they all have the same challenges, whether it be startup to growth and acceleration, or family discord. Even if it's non-family, everyone has fallouts. All of those things happen worldwide. But to be able to talk to other businesses about how you got through it, that's what we want to facilitate.
And I wish you all the luck in the world. No doubt you'll be incredibly successful in other countries. So again, Dave, Sue, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed that. I learned so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. Again, if you think you'd be a good guest on the show, then please drop me an email at joe@innersound.media. See you in the next episode.